Right, so we've just navigated the intricate landscapes of Parmenides as interpreted by Aristotle and Theophrastus. Now let's turn our attention directly to the source material, particularly through Sextus Empiricus's lens. What emerges is a stark contrast between the established ways of thinking and Parmenides' radical proposal. He lays out a path, a logos, not just any path, but one that leads to genuine conviction, to aletheia, truth. This isn't about popular opinion, doxa. It's about what can be known through reason alone. And here's where it gets really interesting. Parmenides throws the senses under the bus. He argues they are fundamentally unreliable, deceptive even. Think about that, the very foundation of empirical science, dismissed by one of its earliest philosophical figures. We're looking at the opening salvo of a philosophical revolution based purely on logic. So Parmenides is setting up camp against the prevailing winds. You've got Heraclitus, the guy shouting about everything changing. You can't step in the same river twice. Parmenides basically says, hold on, that's just your opinion, your doxa. It's not the real truth, the aletheia. Why? Because as he puts it, as each person has a blending of much bent limbs, so's his mind present to men, Fragment 17. In plain English, our physical state, our body, shapes our thoughts and perceptions. If your senses are constantly shifting due to bodily changes, how can you trust them to grasp a stable reality? It's like trying to measure the ocean with a teaspoon. The tool itself dictates the result. Similarly, thinkers like Empedocles and Anaxagoras were busy mapping out the physical world, elements, seeds of things. But for Parmenides, that was like describing shadows on a cave wall while missing the actual sun outside. Their focus was on the sensible, the many, whereas Parmenides insisted the only thing that truly is must be singular and unchanging. Let's hammer home this point about reason being the ultimate judge. Parmenides isn't just saying, I think therefore I am in a fancy way. He's establishing reason, logos, as the absolute criterion for what is real. Look at his language, a path wholly without report of opinion, Fragment 3. He wants to cut through the noise of everyday belief. He demands genuine conviction, Fragment 1, not just agreement. And then there's that wonderfully dismissive line, and let not habit test, Fragment 7. Think about that habit custom, the way things have always been done or perceived. Parmenides is saying, don't let the familiar fool you. Don't let your ingrained habits dictate what you believe is true. It's a direct challenge to relying on sensory experience. He argues quite bluntly that it is impossible to know the truth through the senses. This is a bombshell. It forces us to ask, if our senses can't give us truth, what can? The answer, according to Parmenides, is reason itself. This sets the stage for his entire metaphysical project. Okay, so if reason is king and the senses are unreliable, what does reason tell us about reality? Parmenides paints a picture of being that is utterly unlike anything we experience. First off, it's one. Not two, not three, not many. It's singular, indivisible. The same thing as conceiving and being. Fragment 4. Think about that. The act of understanding and the thing understood are identical. There's no separation between the knower and the known in this realm. Second, it doesn't change. No coming into existence, no passing away. It remains the same and in that same state. Fragment 8. Imagine trying to describe something that never changes. It's hard. Third, it's limitlessly full. It's not empty space, it's all full of being. Fragment 8. It contains everything, yet it's also whole of limb. Fragment 8, complete in itself. Fourth, it's unmoved. It doesn't move because it doesn't have a place to move to or from. It's unshaken, Fragment 8, and equally poised from the center, Fragment 8. It's like a perfect sphere, containing all space within itself. Finally, it's self-contained. It doesn't need anything else. It's the totality of reality, existing perfectly and eternally. This is the being Parmenides discovers through reason. Now, Parmenides didn't operate in a vacuum. His ideas clearly resonated. We see Euclides of Megara, a key figure in the Stoic tradition, explicitly studying Parmenides' writings. Others, like Protagoras, seem to have borrowed his arguments against the idea of a single, unified reality. In Diogenes' Laertius list, Parmenides is grouped with Melissus and Anaxagoras as philosophers who left behind a single major work, suggesting his On Nature was considered a landmark text. There's also speculation about connections to the Pythagoreans. Some sources, like Iamblichus, talk about Pythagorean teachings spreading to Italy, and Parmenides was indeed from Aelia in southern Italy. While direct evidence is scarce, some scholars group him and Empedocles with the Pythagoreans, perhaps due to shared interests or locations. And let's not forget the form. Writing philosophy in verse wasn't unique to Parmenides. Hesiod, Xenophanes, and Empedocles did it too. Maybe it was a way to make complex ideas memorable, or perhaps it reflected a different cultural context for philosophy in Magna Graecia. Fast forward a few centuries, and Plotinus, the heavyweight of Neoplatonism, engages deeply with Parmenides. Plotinus sees Parmenides as having already touched upon core Neoplatonic ideas, albeit perhaps less explicitly. He distinguishes Parmenides' two paths, one leading to truth, aletheia, the other to mere opinion, doxa. For Plotinus, this aligns perfectly with his own system. If Parmenides says the same thing is conceiving and being, Fragment 4, Plotinus asks, what conceives? The intellect, nous. So if intellect is part of being, then intellect itself must be part of this ultimate reality. This leads to fascinating conclusions about time. Parmenides' being exists eternally, unchanging. Time for Plotinus is generated later through definition and nature, Fragment 112. It's a consequence of the intelligible world, not its prerequisite. The goal then is contemplation, theoria. By contemplating, we ascend from the physical world, nature, through the soul towards the intellect. And in this highest state, Plotinus argues, the knower and the known become one. There's no separation anymore because fundamentally the same thing is being and conceiving. Fragment 4. It's a mystical union achieved through pure reason. Plotinus goes further, positioning Parmenides as a precursor to Plato's own system. He argues that Plato didn't just invent the idea of intellect and soul descending from the good. He was building on older traditions, specifically Parmenides. How? Because Parmenides, Plotinus claims, already saw being and intellect as intertwined, both removed from the sensible world. He took being out of the physical realm. Plotinus even interprets Parmenides' being in terms of his own three natures doctrine, the strict one, the one many, and the one in many. This suggests Parmenides might have had a more sophisticated understanding of unity than just simple oneness. Crucially, for Plotinus, intellect knows being directly. It doesn't perceive it from outside, it is being. Intellect intelligizes the things that really are, not as if they were somewhere else. It's like the first lawgiver, or better yet, the law itself of being. And how can being contain many things without being many itself? Plotinus uses Parmenides' line, being draws near to being, Fragment 825, to argue that being contains difference internally, not spatially. It's a rich internal diversity within ultimate unity. Other commentators add interesting details. Alexander of Aphrodisias, working through Aristotle, reinforces that point about thinking being tied to the body. Parmenides, like Heraclitus before him, believed our mental state is directly influenced by our physical condition and the sensible world around us. It's a reminder that even for Parmenides, the body and senses have some influence, even if they are ultimately unreliable guides to truth. Then there's Porphyry, who gives us a juicy anecdote. Empedocles was not only a student of Parmenides but also his young lover. Whether true or apocryphal, it speaks to the intensity of their relationship and the direct transmission of ideas. It paints a picture of a vibrant philosophical school. Porphyry also notes that Plato, when arguing against the one, used similar strategies to those found in Parmenides, showing the ongoing dialogue and debate sparked by Parmenides' work. Beyond the core metaphysics, there are hints at other aspects of Parmenides' thought. Anatolius suggests that Parmenides and Empedocles might have adopted Pythagorean cosmology, specifically the idea of a central fiery cube representing the monadic nature, the source of all things. This central fire would be like a hearth, keeping the cosmos balanced. It's an intriguing link between Parmenides' abstract being and a more concrete, albeit still mystical, physical model. Then Menander Rhetor points out something fascinating about the hymns. He classifies certain hymns as scientific, meaning they explain the nature of gods like Apollo or Zeus, using natural principles, e.g., Apollo is the sun, Zeus is the hot. Parmenides and Empedocles, he says, used this approach, as did Plato in the Phaedrus when explaining love as an affection of the soul, using the image of winged Eros. This shows Parmenides wasn't just an abstract theorist. He could apply his rational framework to explain phenomena, even religious ones, in a way that anticipates later developments in natural philosophy and rhetoric. Let's touch on some historical and interpretive nuances. Eusebius gives us a date around 456 BCE for when Parmenides became known, placing him firmly in the early classical period. But how exactly did he differ from others? Chalcidius, commenting on Plato, highlights a key distinction between Parmenides and Melissus, both followers of Xenophanes. Both argued that the origin of things is one unmoved. But Parmenides, according to Chalcidius, described this being as perfect and definite, while Melissus portrayed it as infinite and indeterminate. This is significant. It suggests Parmenides' being, while singular, had boundaries and structure, unlike Melissus' potentially boundless, formless one. Chalcidius also contrasts the pre-Socratics, Empedocles focused on the sensible world, versus Parmenides, concerned solely with the intelligible. This reinforces the core divide Parmenides established, the realm of sense perception versus the realm of pure reason. Proclus, another major Neoplatonist, offers a fascinating interpretation. He believes Plato didn't just react to Parmenides but completed his work. How? Proclus argues that Parmenides, despite starting with if one is,
Fragment 137b.
was actually beginning from the one being, the being that has the property of oneness. Parmenides starts in the intelligible realm but aims to lead the reader upwards to the purely one, the ultimate principle. It's a subtle but crucial distinction. Proclus confirms the two paths, truth, aletheia, and opinion, doxa, corresponding to the intelligible, being, and the non-intelligible, non-being. And remember that image, the sphere. Proclus sees it as deeply symbolic. It represents intellect itself, with its perfect self-containment and circular motion. From intellect comes the monad, and from the monad comes the cosmos, which is an image of the divine. Parmenides' description of being as like the volume of a spherical ball, fragment 843, captures this idea of a complete, self-sufficient, central reality. Proclus also brings Zeno into the picture. He sees Zeno's famous paradoxes and arguments as serving a specific purpose, providing the training, gymnasia, for Parmenides' philosophy. Zeno's job was to clear the ground, to refute the contradictions and the path of opinion, making way for Parmenides' ascent to the truth of the one. Think of Zeno as the negative dialectic clearing away obstacles, while Parmenides presents the positive vision. They used different methods. Parmenides, even in poetry, aimed for clarity and direct statements about being. Zeno, however, employed complex, often paradoxical arguments to show the absurdity of assuming plurality and change. And remember that puzzle about Parmenides, starting with, if one is, versus if one being is. Proclus offers a resolution. He argues Parmenides begins with the one being, which inherently includes the concept of is, but his philosophical journey ultimately leads beyond even that, towards the strictly one which transcends the very notion of is. It's a climb from a well-defined unity to an ineffable oneness. So, wrapping up our look at these testimonies, what's the takeaway? Parmenides wasn't just another philosopher, he was a foundational figure. He set a new bar for philosophy, demanding rigorous reasoning and logical consistency above all else. His radical ontology, the idea of a single, unchanging, indivisible, and all-encompassing being, didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was a direct challenge to the assumptions of his time and has cast a long shadow over the history of metaphysics. From Plato and Aristotle to Plotinus and beyond, Parmenides' questions and arguments kept philosophers debating, refining, and reacting for centuries. His legacy isn't just in what he said, but in the very questions he forced everyone to ask about the nature of reality and the limits of human knowledge.